Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video I'm going to be giving an overview of psychological research, the start of chapter 2, and we'll go ahead and go into it. So first, why is research important? Similar to chapter 1, go ahead and try to build connections of thinking about what you already know about research and then thinking of ways of why research is important. Feel free to pause the video in order to think about this. And then what are some ways besides research that we discover things about the natural world? Let me know what you think, either on your notes or just think about it. The first one is intuition. This is a feeling deep down in which we believe that something is right. Although intuition may feel right, it is often overshadowed by a sense of feeling over logic or facts. And intuition may be the basis of an interest in trying to discover something, but without proper science to back that intuition, we can't prove that a feeling is something is fact. For example, as you see here, Einstein was quoted by saying this: although he may have had the intuition to study various aspects of physics, he had to prove those intuitions and ideas through science and research. Next, we have authority figures. We often listen to authority figures because they are socially a higher rank than we are. They have the authority to change or modify our lives to a certain extent. So why wouldn't we listen to authority and their presumed facts? It is important to decipher what these authority figures are saying, who they got their information from, and how we can investigate to figure out what they're claiming. For example, Hitler was in a position of power and authority during World War II and had many people in Europe listen to him just for the sake that he was in power. But as we know and learn from history and World War II, Hitler was very wrong about his ideas. And a more amusing example of authority involves Michael Scott from The Office. If you haven't watched the show, he is a boss at an office that sells paper. And he often has very bad ideas and is not respected by his employees because of it. If those employees listen to him all the time because he is the boss, then the office would turn into chaos. We often see this when Dwight often listens to Michael and does crazy things that Michael tells him to do in the office. Next, we have luck. We could also portray luck and a lucky discovery of something as fact. If someone gets lucky on one instance, how lucky is the person in the same situation over again or in different situations? Most of the time, luck is a one-time thing and does not cross over the line to being a fact. For example, if you happen to forget about turning in an assignment, but remember at the last minute, you might end up getting full points on the assignment, and you may think, wow, I got really lucky, maybe I should do this all the time and I'll get a good grade. But most likely, you won't remember to turn in an assignment if you wait to do it the last minute consistently. And also you may not get a good grade if you turn it in at the last minute consistently. And then finally, or lastly, we have one's personal experience. May make someone believe that because it happened to me, then that's the truth or fact. One thing we'll learn about research is that if something doesn't replicate to other people, then there's less credibility in that believed fact. So for example, if you went to the beach and got stung by jellyfish, you might warn people not to go to that beach because there's a high risk that jellyfish will sting you. But in reality, it could just be that during that 1 week, jellyfish were more in that area. And now less people will go to that beach because of your personal experience. Another example is if I told you that TikTok was the best app you could ever download because it makes you laugh and really enjoy the experience, you might start watching it. But you may use the app and not agree with me and think that it's just a waste of time. Thus, because of my personal experience, saying that TikTok was one of the greatest apps, it may not be true for other people whose perspective is that it's a horrible app of just watching people dance. Moving on, instead of these previous things we learn about the natural world that's not backed by science, we discover things about the world through the scientific method. As we learned last week, the scientific method starts with a general interest or question that forms into a hypothesis. The scientific method is a process used to conduct research through testing ideas against the real world. The main basis of scientific research is replication, which means consistently testing ideas and hypotheses about a topic, which helps develop what we know about a certain question we're trying to answer. And the scientific method involves proposing hypotheses, conducting research, and creating or modifying theories based on our results. What we'll be learning in the class and in your future psychology courses is psychological research, which uses the scientific method to study behavior, cognition or the mind, and physiological body processes of humans or animals. And there are many uses and benefits to research. First, it allows us to investigate theories and debate its findings. For example, there's no link that has been found through research to link vaccines to autism, although some research when the discussion first started claimed that it was. In fact, that research has now been ruled false due to many issues in the methodology of that research. So we often use research to find and debate findings, and other researchers will often duplicate or redo research in order to see if it holds true. And in this fact, we now know that vaccines do not cause autism. Research also allows us to critically analyze issues from multiple perspectives. There could be research on a topic that involves many different findings that piece a psychology theory together. Research can also influence politics or policies. As we're seeing now, there are issues with the accuracy of coronavirus data around the world, but the data that we do have now is being used by the government and politicians to help people. But they could also use that same data to fit their own political agenda. That is why good science is very important. Also, research can influence policies. As we've seen with the Black Lives Matter movement, there are huge disparities and inequalities for Black people in this country. And there are many studies that back the fact that there are multiple disparities and inequalities of these Black individuals. Along with policy, research influences budgets and fiscal policies. MSJC gathers data on students who pass which classes and which students transfer, which helps the state of California provide money or budgets for the school. And research allows us to learn to be better critical consumers of information, such as making useful decisions on what products to buy, what services we should be using, and what treatments work and which don't for our daily lives. For example, it might be important to acknowledge that you can buy something from a small business rather than Amazon, a huge company. Also, there's a lot of information that can be spread on social media like Facebook, so it's good to be critical of the posts you read and be critical of information. And finally, research allows us to differentiate between fact and opinion. As you can see here, fact is observable in our reality that is established by empirical evidence, whereas opinions are personal judgments, biases, unfounded conclusions, or attitudes that may not be accurate. This leads us to how we actually conduct research. So here's an illustration about the cycle of research. First, we start with a theory, which is a set of ideas that propose to explain an observation in the world. They are repeatedly checked against other research and findings, and theories are often complex because they incorporate many different parts into one large idea or construct. And then in order to test a theory, researchers use hypotheses to investigate a certain part of the theory that helps explain the theory as a whole. A hypothesis is a testable prediction based on a general question or phenomenon around the world. A hypothesis must be a testable prediction about how the world will behave if the idea is correct. Researchers must be able to test the idea in some capacity. And hypotheses are worded as an if-then statement, such that, for example, I hypothesize that if this happens, then this will be the result. And then one important feature of creating a hypothesis is that it must be falsifiable, meaning that a hypothesis can be proven false. And then next, we would want to conduct research to test our hypothesis and then observe our findings. For example, let's say we want to test a theory about Harry Potter. If you're not familiar with Harry Potter, he's a young boy who is sent to Hogwarts, a wizard school, where he learns how to be a wizard. And while he is in school, the evil Lord Voldemort is rising to power in the world, and Harry is determined to stop him. So when we first start with the theory that Harry is the best student in Hogwarts compared to other students like Draco Malfoy, we want to make a hypothesis that is clear and defines how he can be the chosen one or be the best wizard in Hogwarts compared to other students. So our hypothesis might look like this. I might say I hypothesize that Harry Potter is more powerful than Draco Malfoy, another student in Hogwarts. Then I would test this hypothesis by having Harry and Draco do a series of magical tests and observe the results. This hypothesis is falsifiable because although I am hypothesizing that Harry is more powerful than Draco, the reverse can be true, and Draco could be more powerful than Harry. Thus, my hypothesis can be falsified. Whereas a non-falsifiable hypothesis in this example would state something like, Harry Potter is the chosen one that would defeat Voldemort. But this isn't falsifiable because other people aren't able to defeat Lord Voldemort if Harry is the chosen one. So as you can see here, because of Harry deemed as the chosen one to defeat Voldemort, it's not falsifiable that any other person can defeat Voldemort, whereas in our previous example of a hypothesis, we can test which is more powerful, either Harry or Draco. Like I mentioned before, research can be a circular process, as you can see here. Hypotheses lead to observations, and then these observations are made into new hypotheses to be made. And this process involves deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. Deductive reasonings are ideas that are tested through logical deductive reasoning in order to reach a conclusion about a question or a hypothesis. And then after obtaining and observing those results, inductive reasoning is used to interpret the results by comparing your own results to others' results. And then this could lead to new questions or hypotheses. Deductive reasoning is often started with a generalization about a topic of interest and tested using real-world observations through the scientific method. So for example, if I hypothesize that Harry Potter is more powerful than Draco, I would have to test that theory by using the scientific method. So I might design a study that investigates if he is more powerful by testing his physical abilities compared to Draco's. And then after obtaining the results and observing the results that support whether Harry Potter is better or not, I would then have to use inductive reasoning to state that Harry is more powerful than Draco by comparing others' results to my results that I got. It could so happen that another researcher with the same question may have found that Draco was more powerful than Harry. So if that was the case, I would have to remodify my hypothesis again and test that hypothesis once more. And just an overview of the scientific method. So first we start with a literature search. and this could be done through many databases. MSJC has its own database, which you'll be using in the learning activity for Chapter 2. And this is where you read about information and research and different theories on a topic of interest. And then after we read up about a theory or the research we want to do on a topic, we ended up forming a hypothesis. As you know, it has a specific theory, and it has to be falsifiable. And then we create a research design that would test our hypothesis. And if you take research methods or Psych 124, this is what you'll be doing in that class, testing hypotheses. And then you would be using statistical analyses in order to run tests on the data that you gathered. Again, you'll do this in research methods if you take it in the future. And then you would end up publishing your results to a peer-reviewed scientific journal. Research that wants to be published needs to go through the journal application process, and this is usually peer-reviewed by other scientists in the field that are familiar with your topic of interest. And then hopefully, depending on your results, this will lend to the general theory of the topic of interest, and the research often adds a piece of the puzzle to a theory that you want to investigate. So this is the basic scientific method overview, and that's the basis of psychological research. In the next video, we're going to be going over certain approaches to research, and I'll see you guys then. Thanks.